Hello, everyone. Welcome to KTK Plus. I'm your host, Tristan Van Beam, and today I want to talk about the holiday season coming up. Now, I know that around this time of the year, people are quick to jump into decorating for Christmas and obsessing over the perfect gift to buy for those that they care about. But it feels like sometimes people just kind of forget about Thanksgiving traditions and the holiday and what that holiday brings to our tables. And here with me today, I have Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service economist and Department of Agriculture economics professor David Anderson, who is going to explain the tremendous spike in turkey prices in 2025. David, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Of course, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for asking. I'm glad to see that you're doing great as well. And I was also just sent this press release stating that turkey prices are currently up by 70% from last year's prices. David, where is this huge upcharge coming from?
Well, I think it's important, first off, to point out that those turkey prices we're talking about are kind of the wholesale spot market. And it really highlights as we hit Thanksgiving a real, almost a disconnect sort of between wholesale and retail prices. So we've got this spike in wholesale prices, really driven by tighter supplies. And we're dealing with avian influenza again that is really been hitting turkey flocks pretty hard, kind of in the upper Midwest portion of the country. Really bad timing for Thanksgiving, and so it's really hitting some of the supply side of turkeys. But uh, when we get to turkeys going to the grocery store, most of our big grocery store chains, they and restaurants for that matter, they contract turkeys well in advance. So they have a contracted price that's probably a lot lower than what we're seeing in wholesale. And every store every year is running a special on turkeys as we hit Thanksgiving. So I think it really is nice to kind of highlight, boy, we got this pressure in the wholesale market, but retail, it may not be quite so bad.
So could you kind of explain to me that difference between the retail market and the wholesale market? Why are changes in that so effective on changing the price of not just turkeys but just goods in general?
Yeah, so when you go to the store shopping for Thanksgiving, you're looking for a turkey, but you're also looking for a whole bunch of other stuff. All the fixings, whether it's you're going to make, mashed potatoes, rice, green beans,
Mhm.
stuffing, you name it, all the stuff that goes into those items. So a grocery store wants you to shop at their store. So it's very common to have a special going on that where the turkeys are on special, or a special that's tied in with other items, or maybe oftentimes tied in with a ham, something like that. And so in that regard, many times the retail strategy of your local grocery store kind of ties those things together. So, it's the retail may not completely reflect what's happening in the wholesale market.
Okay, so I think you just mentioned it right there too, but I've also heard that other Thanksgiving staples such as potatoes and cranberries are also on the rise in the price range. Can you kind of give me an overview on why that is? Is it another supply issue or is it retail? What's going on there?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag on all the fixings. We certainly see cranberries are higher priced than they
Mm.
were a year ago. According to USDA's weekly retail featuring report, I think we all recognize throughout the economy, costs are higher of getting the stuff from where we produce it to where we consume it. And so whether that's fuel, labor, all these other costs go into that final retail price. So that adds a little pressure there. I think some of the other items, it's kind of a mixed bag. Some are a little more, some are a little less.
And I like how you just said it right there. It's all a mixed bag because I was just about to bring up how there are some dairy products that are actually cheaper right now, including milk, eggs, and pumpkins that was also in that press release. Has there been a recent shift in the supply and demand for those products, or is it just kind of the same reason behind the turkey as well?
Well, in the case of milk, we're actually increasing milk production in the
Hmm.
U.S. We had, particularly late last year, profitable prices and for milk for farmers, and so they've really been increasing the size of the cow herd, the number of cows in the U.S. We are at the highest number of dairy cows in the U.S. since in decades. And with that comes really increasing milk production, and I think that probably suggests some lower dairy product prices on the horizon for us as production really increases. So, I think, as we think about hope for lower prices for us consumers, I think there is some hope there on the dairy side simply because we're producing a lot more.
Okay, so now that we know that there's prices that are on the rise and also that are decreasing for certain items around Thanksgiving time, where can people go to find cheaper Thanksgiving items or substitutes, especially with the whole government shutdown still going on and everyone kind of not having their SNAP benefits? So where can they go to find those cheaper items?
Well, I think the main thing is like we always do, you look at your local sale paper, the coupons. If you're on the phone, you may have the app from your local grocery store where they're running discounts. They got special features going on. So wherever you find those coupons, that stuff's kind of the same, but certainly a lot more of them are online today. You know, just to mention one other thing, we talk about this really high jump in wholesale prices for turkeys in that spot market. Many of those are going to show up as a fresh turkey at your grocery store or some special type turkey item, that you may be ordering. When we look at turkeys, I often tend to look at sort of the frozen bird that, a lot of us buy those frozen turkeys. USDA's weekly retail price report for this week actually showed a real increase in the number of features and specials. And they actually reported those frozen, conventionally produced turkeys actually a little cheaper than they were last year. But it's the fresh birds that are much more expensive. Some of the other ones, if you were looking for an already cooked one or a smoked one or something like that, again, we're seeing some higher prices there. Maybe some lower prices for those frozen ones. So maybe if we can maybe we're a little flexible in what we buy. We look around a little more. We might find some pretty decent deals.
That honestly does make a lot of sense to me. You get what you pay for. So if you want the fresh stuff, you're gonna have to pay a little more. But if you want the cheaper stuff, then you're gonna just get a cheaper product. So I guess that does make sense on that end. And I just wanted to ask, are we seeing any trends that excuse me, are we seeing any trends that prices may come lower more towards Christmas time for other foods? Because there's also Christmas staple foods as well.
For many years, lots of people thought about you got that turkey at Thanksgiving. A lot of people did turkeys at Christmas too. And I think one of the struggles over the last decade or so on the turkey industry has just been changing consumer demand, where maybe they didn't want that second turkey, but they were going to do something else like a standing rib roast, a prime rib. At my house, we started doing barbecue at Christmas for Christmas dinner. So we're doing a brisket, we're doing stuff like that. And, beef prices have certainly been record high also because we have less production. So, I think it kind of depends on what you're looking for and what kind of your taste is for that Christmas dinner or New Year's dinner as well. This is holiday time, and we it sort of changes with our sort of tastes and preferences, as us economists would say.
And is there anything that you would say to consumers who are frustrated just about the fluctuating prices in general, whether they're going up or down? What would you say to them to just kind of help relieve some of this holiday stress?
I found, so I'm an economist and I work in livestock and meat. I've always found, at least for me, it helps to understand why those prices are moving. Particularly with our food items, our agricultural commodities, the ones that are closer to the where the animals are produced. A steak, ground beef, a ham, sausage, turkeys. How much we're producing and why, whether it's higher feed cost or now lower feed costs. HPAI, avian influenza outbreak, and its influence on eggs and turkeys particularly. If we kind of understand where it comes from, at least we're not. At least we know the reason. We may not like it, but at least we know kind of why it's happening, rather than just somebody pressing a button on us. I find that comforting, at least.
I find that a little comforting too. At least there's reasons behind it, not just, someone saying, oh, this is the way I want things to be.
Let's stick it to them today, or whatever it
Yeah.
is. It's
Yeah, of course.
our food. our food is produced out on range and pastures and fields by farmers and ranchers across the country. And, the vagaries of weather and drought and flooding and all of that affects our supplies. It affects our production
Mhm.
costs, which then translates eventually to food items. And so, we've certainly dealt with a lot of drought in Texas and the US over the last decade, kind of moving droughts and different, and that just affects how much we can produce. And that's part of this picture. It's part of agriculture since the beginning of time.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't just show up in the grocery stores, right? There's a lot of people that this food has to go through in a big process. So it does make sense that there's sometimes a little bit of disruption in the supply chain.
That's right. That's right. And so at least I find it helpful to kind of understand that and remember that drought, rainfall, the right amounts and the right time has a lot to do with our food costs.
True, very true. Well, thank you so much, David, for coming on the show today. I really appreciate you giving us so much knowledge and giving advice for people who may be struggling to get that Thanksgiving food ready to go this holiday season. I appreciate your time.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad to do it.